Thank you so much for staying tuned. Like I said before we went on that break about languages that are going extinct. And many people have the opinion that if something is not done, it will be the world or this country or those states communicating via one language. Yeah, it could be English, it could be Pidgin, but local dialects, our mother's tongue, if you want to call it that, will be forgotten if some things are not put in place, and that is going to form the cross of this discussion. And of course, I have Ehi Egile, yeah, retired squadron leader, and he's the president of Benin Cultural Center. Epadomosa. Hope I got it correctly this time.
No, you got it right this time. You got it right.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sitting very close to him. He's working on his PhD already. Yeah, in Edo language. He's also a lecturer in Benin. When you talk about Edo language, join me to welcome Iradia. Yes, Osemigero. Iradia, welcome to the show.
Thank you very
I appreciate your coming.
Thank you for having me.
All right. It's good for us to start off from our elders because it's been in forefront of saving, so to speak, of Edo language. Apart from Edo language, other languages also, they find it difficult to really find a place when you talk about globalization. Squadron leader retired, sir. How do you feel about all this language being endangered species? Or will I use the word going into extinction?
Okay.
I
think that's a better frame of words. The Europeans and the people we classify the Western world, they are responsible for what is happening. We had our language before they conquered us. After we were conquered, they enforced their language on us subliminally. That is, they set up schools in English language, in some other countries in French language. The French people, the Germans, the Portuguese. So it is the influence of the Western civilization, as they call it, the Western influence, that is causing our languages to go extinct. I'm speaking now in English language, not in Edo language. They have played down on our languages and enhanced their own, you know. All the books are written in English in Nigeria. But most of them are written in English language. All the study programs or most study programs in Nigerian institutions are in English language. Our dictionaries in English language. Even the radio stations, the TV stations you broadcast mainly in English language. So the effect is the domination by the Western world on us. That's why our languages, some of our languages are going extinct.
All right. I'll come back to you, squadron leader. Now, Iradia, you are studying Edo language. You're a lecturer also in Uniben doing your PhD. He blames it on Western influence and European influence. Do you share his thoughts and opinions on this?
To a large extent, yes. But I will also look at it from another angle. Because it is hard for somebody else to maintain your own house for you. The Westernization actually has a role to play. But our own role as the owners of the language, to a large extent, also to a large extent affected the language. There's a policy, the National Policy for Education, which actually provided for the promotion of these languages. And the white man, the Western people will not come here to implement those policies for us. Our governments, individuals, and schools have a right to implement these languages. I know there was a time when in school, you speak your local language, we call it vernacular. You are brought out and flogged. But till now, I think to a large extent, some teachers still do that. These two things I've mentioned are one of the things that our people have actually neglected. They have neglected our languages. The policy, I'm sure very many people are not aware of this policy that I just mentioned, that the policy states that the local language, the language of the immediate environment, should be used to teach from 0 age, that's your first year in school, to 3 years. Should be used as a medium of instruction. You don't say it should be taught as a subject. It should be used as a medium of instruction. I'm quoting the policy. But if you look at our schools today, because why I tend to hammer on the school is that our children these days spend more time in school. You can begin to say parents are supposed to be teaching their children their local language. The environment is supposed to. But the school is part of the environment. If the policy that's supposed to promote this language and make this language not go into extinction is not implemented, then you can see that what we are going through now, our children don't understand our languages. So to a large extent, the non-implementation of this policy and the negligence of our people, because no longer see any need to study our languages, are part of the problem.
Okay, now he talked about a policy from, let's say, the early days of school till about 3 years. Instructions should be passed across to pupils and students via the language of that environment. And many schools, they are not adhering to this policy. Is that also a crack in policy implementation when it comes to our local languages, sir?
Yes, it's very easy to quote instructions or directives, but implementation is always tough. Guess what happened? When we found out that Edo language was not being taught in schools in Edo State, we went to the Ministry of Education and they said they were short of Edo language teachers. So we said, okay, we'll train Edo language teachers for you. That's why we trained 300 Edo language teachers. At least 250 of them made it, you know. Then Adam Oshimole's government now promised to take it over from them. So you are right, implementation is what is, you know. I speak Edo language fluently. It started from the home. My mother speaking it to me, my parents speaking it to me, my bigger brothers and sisters speaking the same language. Then at school, we were also taught. So I can read and write in Edo language. So yes, there is this policy that, or instruction, is it United Nations something for education, that children should be taught from the first year to about 5 years or so in their mother tongue before a foreign language can be introduced. So I think the fault is ours. Now, as you rightly said, yes, the initial one was by the Western world, but now we can change all that, you know.
All right, now how are you going to execute such a policy when you have this heterogeneity in languages? You get to see some persons not from a particular area, they have their own language also. They come into that area for education. So how do you think that policy can be implemented? Don't you think that if it's okay, fine, since you are in Benin, let's speak Edo language. What about other languages that are of Edo State?
Yes, just according to the policy, I keep hammering on that policy.
Yeah.
Said the language of the immediate environment.
But is that policy not flawed?
No, I won't say it's flawed, because the immediate environment means where the school is located. The dominant language of that environment should be taught. If, for example, this is Benin, Edo State, the dominant language here is Benin. The Edo language, the dominant language. So it should be taught. Then if you go down to Esako, the dominant language there is the Afemai Esako language. Then should be taught, should be used as a medium of instruction. Then you go down to Esan land. So it's not flawed. Then when it comes to what our father said, in terms of personnel to implement this policy, teachers, short of teachers. Most of the teachers, I would say majority of the teachers in this Edo land are Edo speakers. Okay, if we say nursery 1, 2, 3, at that level, first 3 years of the child's life, the school or the government say, we want this policy to survive. Right now, we don't have enough trained Edo teachers, but these persons are Edo speakers. All the government needs to do is make documents available, put the documents in the classroom, and as far as the teacher can speak the language, to a large extent he can read the language, he can pass it on to the children, and teaching the children in the language. So, as in multilingual situation shouldn't be a factor that will stop us from implementing that policy.
All right. Now, we have this general language, English language. Some are clamoring for pidgin language to be the fine factor right now, want to communicate. Now, take a look at Benin, is the capital of Edo State. And from what you rightly said, the Ministry of Education complained they lack teachers that will be able to transmit these languages from one person to the other. Now, if you start up with this policy, and of course we have a lingua franca, so to speak, then I think there'll be a clash of interest, because most parents want their kids or their words to be able to express themselves in a general language.
It's a difficult one. It's a difficult situation, because when United Nations made that proclamation, I don't think they took into cognizance that there could be other people with different ethnic background that will be in the locality. Like here in Benin, you have Igbos, you have Yorubas, you have a Hausa, Fulani, and their children are here. So if you implement that policy, it means whether they like it or not, since you are here, you must learn the Edo language. That's what it means. You know. But I want to say that it is not throughout their term of studies. It's the initial part of their lives. Once they adopt that language, you will never forget it in life. That is the catch point in it, that once the children are able to speak their indigenous languages as also at an early age, they won't forget. But again, the point you are making is other people living, for example, here in Benin City, who are from other ethnicities. So
because this is the capital, you have to have other people put into consideration.
So it's their choice. When you are in Lagos or when you are in the Yoruba land community, in fact, when you go to the market, if you don't speak Yoruba, you can't trade successfully. If you go to Igbo land, the same thing. If you go to the north, if you don't speak Hausa, you know. So I think it's okay that the people living in Benin and they decide to send their children to schools here must learn the Edo language.
All right, now you want to make it a must. What if they're not done with the language? What then happens? Is that not infringing on their rights?
There's actually what they call language rights. The people that owns the land, the people that are indigenous of a particular community have a right to defend their language and make sure the language does not go into extinction. When you got to an environment, I think it's an advantage that you can have 1, 2, 3 languages that you can speak. So it won't be a bad thing if, for instance, you're an Igbo man, your children growing up in Benin can speak Benin. It won't be a bad thing. I have a brother, a sister who grew up in the Yoruba land in Lagos. He flows well in Yoruba. and flows well in English, it's not an advantage. It's not a disadvantage, sorry. It's an added advantage that you can speak 1, 2, or 3 more or more languages. That's it. So when you find yourself anywhere, you see that the language of their environment is being promoted, you embrace it. Instead of revolting to say, no, this is a general language, this is a capital city, the language or English. But you forget that you have your own indigenous language that you will also want to pass on to the next generation. Because the problem we have here is these languages are not being passed down. It's not transferred from generation to the other. And once this present generation, I think the parents that can speak the language now, there are, I think, 6 levels of language endangerment, according to the UNESCO arrangement. There is safe language. There is unsafe language. There is severely endangered language. There is absolutely endangered language. And there is an extinct language. So the extinct language is language that have nobody speaking it anymore. The severely endangered language are the languages that only parents can converse with. But the one that is most endangered is the one that the children, the present generation children can't speak. You see in a home today, a father is a Edo man, the mother is a Edo man, they talk to each other speaking Edo language. The moment the children comes in, or the child comes in, they switch to English. And you know, this is dangerous to our language. And once a language dies, the culture, because the language is the vehicle of the culture.
To transmit the culture.
To transmit the culture. You cannot effectively transmit culture in another language. Because the language you bring in, to a large extent, will affect the content that you are transmitting to the... You see these days, we are complaining that children no longer have respect. Children are now so wild and all this. In our Edo culture, we know children, we bring our children up in respect. You imagine some people tend to target in different ways. But once a child wakes up in the morning, we have how we greet. We call it uku, ukuedo, morning salutation. That is what we are known for. Okay. And I'm also sure it's the only Edo language that has that in the whole world.
Okay.
You can be identified. The family from which you come from can be identified from the greeting you greet in the morning.
All right, now, don't think that these things boils down to the family. It's not even in the educational, I'll talk about the primary and, of course, the secondary schools. It's just mainly family thing.
No, I don't think so. It's not only family thing. The government is also accountable to the decline in our usage of our language or our languages. Just as UNESCO directed, if the government should train enough teachers, I will use my language, Edo language, enough Edo language teachers, the children will learn the language at school. When they get home, they'll be speaking, their parents will be excited and will join in. So there'll be a kind of revival of the language. I think the government has a lot to do in this regard. The government can also make a law that the private schools too must teach Edo language. So when teachers are trained and sent to the various schools to teach Edo language at an early stage, our children will pick interest in it. Our adults will also pick interest in it. This is why the Benin Cultural Heritage Center, every summer holiday, offers free Edo language summer school for children. There are books, there are food, there are writing material, all free. It comes up every August. And the children are highly interested in the program. So I think the government has a lot to do in both local government and state government and federal government. They all have to come together to see that our languages don't go extinct by training teachers, and insisting that these languages must be taught in both private and public schools.
All right. Now, in the case where you have intertribal marriage, how can you really resolve that? You get to see someone from Edo State, a person from Akwa Ibom, or from Cross Rivers, or from Kano, Kaduna, or Ibadan, you just name it. How can you really...
Our culture, he spoke about culture. Our culture, even the European culture, has it that you belong to your husband's family. When you marry a man, you're married into a family, you become a member of that family. So as a member of that family, you are now an Edo lady. If you are an Igbo, there's a cousin of mine married to an Igbo lady. The Igbo lady learned how to speak Benin, and she speaks it now.
Now, what if the man doesn't know how to speak the language? What then happens?
This is the reason you call for this program, to enlighten our listeners and viewers, right? Right. That the father, the husband, should insist that I have a sister married to a non-Edo person. She speaks the husband's language fluently. I guess maybe Wilson's wife is not an Edo lady, so anyway, she must learn how to speak the Edo language, all right? Sorry, I went private.
All right, that's okay. That's okay. We'll still be commenting on these ends on this discussion. Now, he talked about one must know how to speak the language when you are in a marriage. But what if the man or the woman or both, because it's a situation whereby both can't even speak their mother's tongue? What then happens?
That's where the school comes in. The school, every child ends up attending at least the first level of education, which is the primary school. Because to salvage the situation where both a couple are not from the same place, and maybe due to interest, because language has to a large extent to do with interest. If you're not interested, nobody can force you to learn the language you're not interested in, be it your husband or even your husband's family. But if the school to which our children go every day, 5 times a week, spend from morning till about 2, from 2, lectures are going on, and before they come home is about 4, 5 in the evening. If the school take the responsibility, just as our father here said, if government take the responsibility to say our language, our indigenous language must survive, and they hold the bulls by the horn by implementing that policy, is an excuse for the government to say we don't have teachers. It's just giving excuses. Because we have indigenous teachers, people that are indigenous, that can speak the language.
It's not about speaking the language, and the other is for you to be trained to transmit the language.
The teacher has to be trained.
Yes, to a large extent.
Edo language, how to transmit
the teacher has to be
it
trained. The teacher has to be trained. But eventually there is no teacher to teach it, a trained teacher to translate. Then you make do of what? I think I remember a time when this language thing just came up, when it was still really, really hot. When the Caddo law was set up. Most of the persons that were posted to teach the language then was given a crash program of about 1 month or thereabout. You understand? If government have interest in doing this thing, this can be done. There is nothing that cannot be done when you have it in heart, when you have the interest. And
regarding regarding the man and the woman not able to speak the language, during our summer Edo language program for children, many parents call in that they cannot speak the language. Do we have a program for them? So the government can also have my father did not go to formal school, but later in those days the government set up what they call adult education program. So that's where he attended. He started speaking English and writing and reading. So also the government can have an adult learning education center for Edo language.
Oh, now, for what you're saying, if they should base it on local government, each local government have your own training center for your language, that will work.
Yes. And all schools,
All schools.
not
All
just
right. Okay, gentlemen, I really appreciate your wonderful analysis. It's all about languages because many languages, they are endangered here. Before you know it, you will not be able to see anyone that could speak, learn, transmit these languages if time is not taken. You've heard my analysts, they talked about government swinging into actions because you get to hear some persons trying to speak their mother tongue or their language, and you get to see them trying to complete the sentence by adding English or pidgin to it. I mean, that is what is common nowadays. Why some they don't understand it, they just cannot speak it. I remember way back in Olua Primary School. Yes, you're looking at me surprised. I went through that primary school, Olua Primary School. I get to hear the
we say take your time.
I couldn't write it. No, I couldn't, because when I say right, I'll be like, oh my word, I'm lost. But when we talk about understanding the language, it helped me a lot to really understand Edo language. Now, when I came back to Edo State, I was able to pick up some words, and I can speak the language, not fluently though, but at least Pidgin language will say you did try. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I appreciate your wonderful
Say it
analysis.
in Edo language.
I said in Edo language.
Yeah.
That'll be in another dispensation or show, but for now, take it in English. I appreciate both of you. I really do appreciate both of you. If you wake up in the morning, try to encourage your kids and your words to speak your language, all right? Because you have to conserve your culture, and the culture, to say, is in the language. Up next, APC crisis. Yeah, or the crisis rocking the APC. Is it beyond Edo 2020? What can be done to really salvage this, because it's getting more and more messy, scary, and more difficult to comprehend. We'll be right back for the next discussion segment. Do stay tuned.